fighting back through meditative or consciousness means doesn't really enter into the linguistics. The linguistics are actually quite clear that we still have episodes in our future where we're going to see in the media that a farmer somewhere, was either cited by the local authorities or somehow it'll come into the media that he was out there shooting a shotgun at space aliens. So that part of the alien wars is still pending. I just have a tendency to not repeat myself and not go back over the same kind of stuff over and over again because I'm interested in the newer material. So, and the new material at the moment for me has been the Ed Grimsley kind of look out with the night vision goggles and watch it yourself. However, the alien wars are certainly heating up. The alien wars meme is going to hit us in terms of visibility and a bigger impact in October of 2011 than before then. So that'll be kind of not a peak, but rather the real first act of the play, and right now we're just watching the actors get all their makeup on and the orchestra tuning up. However, the other day we had a 300-foot crater left by a fireball in Ecuador or Colombia, I believe, and we've had several instances now of this summer of videos popping up with supposed aliens in the background. So that's part of the broader meme of the cousin Alexei, which is also part of the alien wars. So the alien wars stuff is progressing right along. I suspect that it's going to get really interesting from March onward as we go from March of 2011 through to October of 2011. It could be that we're going to see something staggering. You could even maybe stretch your monkey mind to say that the alien wars are going to be part of the tipping point in November. Again, in which case, hey, that'd be probably a lot better than global thermonuclear war with humans or, the Israelis having their mistake and attacking the Iranians. It'd probably be preferable for all of us to deal with a different reality for a while.
Does that get it for you? Okay, thank you. Do the linguistics at all talk about some kind of a political revolution in this country?
We've had that word, but it's been a subset of what we call a metadata layer. In both the populous US of A and the global pop entity as well as in markets, we've seen huge areas under the word revolution, but revolution itself was part of a larger archetype of social change. And so there may be revolution, but in terms of, people running around with guns and some kind of a civil war sort of a revolution, it doesn't really appear to be that method of manifesting. It does appear that we'll be part of the revolutionary process that will go across the whole planet. And I'm thinking of this more in terms of a conflict or contention between the populace and the powers that be in the interdimensional parasitism that goes on at an energetic level than people running around with guns trying to establish a new political order.
Uh-huh. One Radio Network, Clif I, Half Past Human, Patrick Timpone. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
You're talking to me, Patrick?
Yes, sir. Go ahead. You're on the air.
This is Secret, and I'm in Oklahoma City today. I have 3 quick questions for Clif. Clif, I have some experience with computers and along working those, but the questions that I've never heard you mention, at least I have missed it. I have 3. The first one is, how do you run your program to project the time for the data that you're obviously getting today? Second question is, have you factored in what normal expectations or wants of people as a whole are, and do by any means have you noticed an uptick in your data indicating something for August the 5th or 6th?
Okay, I'm going to let you go because you got a really bad line. So we're talking about the time, the normal expectations, and August the 5th.
Yeah, August has passed, so...
yeah, we missed that. August the 5th.
Yeah. No, didn't see anything. I mean, within August 5th, of course, we had it was within the first 10 days of August. Let's deal with the questions here. Time is factored in by, I had originally, when I set up the whole system, gotten a copy of the Oxford English Dictionary, and I stripped out all in a digital form, and I stripped out all of the definitions and just kept the words in a lexicon. And then I went through and applied various parameters and gave them numeric values for time based on their impact. So, for instance, the word fear has a time component to it. How long it impacts you is longer than the word anxiety. Or the impact is higher, but the anxiety would be with you longer because it's low level and it eats at you longer, whereas fear is much more of a shorter, higher intensity kind of a thing. So based on the word itself, it carries along with it the timing impact. And I'm sorry, what was the second question?
It was about normal expectations.
Yeah, the factoring in. No, I'm sorry, I don't do that kind of thing. It probably makes a lot of sense, but this was never, this project just sort of grew. And so I've always worked from what's expressing itself, not trying to compare it against a normative base, which, again, probably makes a lot of sense. Should have thought of it way back when.
Yeah, I have about 3 or 4 emails talking about in the next few months with financial issues and possible things, and so let me summarize them. So do the linguistics show something that we can kind of put our heads around, Clif High, like events that may trigger some strange financial ongoings, like, say, commercial real estate, derivatives, bank failures, those kinds of things in the
Sure.
next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, actually we're at a crux relative to the economy, which is independent of the tipping point, although it participates in it. So the economy is going to be flushed regardless of what happens in November.
Mm-hmm.
But we may see the November tipping point actually may be an expression of the flushing of the economy. We know this that from the linguistics, but we also have valid historical association with those linguistics. So in other words, right at this particular point in this depression, we're worried about, in the moment today, in our markets, we're worried about European debt. And coincidentally, in the Great Depression of the previous century, in the 30s, they had a period in which they were worried about European debt, and a bunch of European banks folded, and that started what was known as the bond crisis period of the Depression.
I remember, I read that. That's interesting, isn't it?
Okay, so we're repeating that, and we're repeating it in a different fashion, but a lot of it's there. The oscillation that I've told you about, which is leading up to a 2-week period, so we've got 2 weeks of rising markets here in the U.S., followed by 2 weeks of falling markets as they're worried about something else. And the worry changes every 2 weeks, but nonetheless it's on this little periodicity. That will escalate, and we think that will occur over this next month and a half, such that by the time we reach November, the ability of the Fed, in the form of the Federal Reserve Bank, which is not a bank, it's not a part of federal government, it has no reserves, and it's this criminal cabal that prints money and then demands we pay the interest on money that they created out of paper and out of nothing. That group will become mainly irrelevant. And
irrelevant
to the economic scheme of things from November on. Now, we've had that in our language for years. We just didn't know which November.
From a logical, or if you can, from the mind, how would that happen? I mean,
their ability to create anything of value exists only in terms of confidence. If all of us one day decided that we're tired of having a national debt that goes to 7 families on the planet, everybody says, oh, the horror of the national debt, we owe trillions in stuff. No, wait a second, who do we owe this to?
Who do we owe to? Yeah.
Well, they'll say the Chinese. No, the Chinese are buying our bonds, but we don't owe them a national debt. The national debt is owed to the Federal Reserve cabal, the criminals that sit in this little building that is run by Bernanke, who's the current Kappa of the mafia there. And he says, I'm going to print up $5 and you owe me 5 cents in interest on this dollar I'm about to hand you. And it's a bogus scheme. You'll never be able to, in order to pay him back that 5 cents, you've got to have him print up another dollar, by the way, and give him the 5 cents out of that. And so it just goes on and on and on. And it's an energetic scheme at the same level, because by using their money in this situation, we transfer energy power to them in our energetic view of the universe.
Yes,
So
yeah.
all of that's going to go away beginning this November.
Now, why would it go away?
Well, because at the moment they're at the real close to the point of not being relevant anymore, in the sense that they've got an interest rate that continues to fall, but nobody wants their product.
Right.
They've saturated the planet with dollars, and it just is, without demand, there's no growth for them. Without growth, why do we need them? They'll just stop, basically.
I mean, they'll just stop printing?
Well,
that would be
well, I mean, we'll get to the point where, look at it in the sense of hyperinflation. If they keep printing money, then there's more money chasing fewer items, and pretty soon that $6 organic tomato is $30, and your cup of coffee is
Sure.
$20. And at that point, if it's $20 for a cup of coffee, how much will an ounce of silver be worth? And maybe you'll be dealing in subfractions of silver rather than some Federal Reserve paper note, which is an abstraction. And the markets are all manipulated 100% all the way through.
Sure.
So why would you invest in something knowing that it's manipulated and you're ultimately going to lose? So you'll forget about the Wall Street stuff, and you won't pay your student debt because you know that you'll never, ever make anywhere close to enough money to compensate you for the amount of debt that you owe to the Federal Reserve for your going to school. The whole system is just so rigged.
It's so interesting. And how often do we hear, Clif I? And I hear it all the time, and on our show with Andrew, well, what if the Chinese sell all the Treasury bonds? And Andrew says, well, so what? The Fed will just buy them. What do they care?
Yeah, they're just printing money to cover their own stuff anyway.
So they can print $1 trillion. Are you kidding me? They can do that overnight.
How many trillions have they printed and given to the banks?
Sure.
Which they're not loaning it out, and we know that they're not loaning it out deliberately, and that the whole thing exists on the flow of money, not the actual existence of money.
That's right.
Okay, because there's a difference between wealth and currency, and there's a difference between the hoarding of wealth, the creation of wealth in the form of extra calories at its basic level, and the flow of money through the system. And the people that are controlling us, the powers that be, exist by controlling the flow of things, not by any inherent
controlling
power.
The velocity of money.
And the velocity of information.
The velocity of information as well.
If they know something about the markets, 20 minutes ahead of you,
Sure.
they have power. If they know something about the political system 5 months ahead of you, they have power. So they know by January what laws will be passed in the Congress of that year.
Sure. And then they have that program that Goldman Sachs created that they wanted to make propriety.
Oh yeah, the front running.
Unbelievable, man.
Yeah.
Well, when your business, when you make money by making money,
which is
life is good,
Well, no, it's only good as long as you get people like ourselves to give up real goods for that fake money.
For those dirty pieces of paper,
Yeah.
Well, it sure is. It does make an argument then, as I was talking about before, for not being in paper, gold, or silver, doesn't it?
Ooh, I wouldn't touch that. That's not an investment in gold or silver insofar as I'm concerned. That's an investment in the abstraction of paper.
Especially if things got weird and silver goes to 200. I mean, how many people are going to be fighting over that X amount of silver that you have a piece of paper for?
Correct. And then you're going to get compensated in paper dollars, which, as we've seen in the Argentina experience, when currencies collapse in a modern 21st century state, they do so fairly rapidly in about a 2-month period of time.
Yeah, and that's something that I differ with my good friend Andrew Goss on. I mean, he suggests, if interest rates go to 15 and gold goes to 5,000 and silver goes to 200, you can sell that. And I said, well, what are you going to do with those paper dollars then?
Right, exactly.
And he says, well, you buy treasury bonds.